the last video, we talked about the law sometimes split the crimes into two, which we saw the conduct crimes and result crimes. So just to remind you, I'm going to go through that and discuss with you a little bit about that again, and then we will go more deeper in this paragraph. So as you can see the paragraph here, this is a continuous of the last paragraph. So this is the second and third paragraph on the same topic, conduct crimes and result crimes. So the information is going to be similar, but it's going to be a little expanded. Also, I'm going to offer you a chance to, if you want to read, you can read the paragraphs on the pages as you want. You could pause the video and read them. Or if you want me to read, I can read it for you. And if you don't want to read and just go through discussion, you could skip them and go to discussion. Okay, so now I'll read it for you. The classification of an offense into conduct crimes and result crimes may seem awkward and unhelpful. Nevertheless, it is always necessary to identify the constituent elements of an offense, and use of this classification sometimes highlight the key differences between offences. Thus, the offence of indecent exposure formerly contained within the Town Police Clauses Act 1847 Section 28 was a result crime, because if required proof that these conduct caused the residential or the passengers to be annoyed or obstructed or endangered. In contrast, the offence of judicial exposure created by the SOA 2003 Section 66 is a conduct crime, because it requires a proof only that he exposed himself and intended because this to cause alarm or distress. Nobody need actually have suffered alarm or distress. In theory, nobody need even have seen the offending act. Jurisdictional importance of classification. The distinction between the conduct crimes and the result crimes was for many years crucial in determining the jurisdiction over the cross-frontier offences under the so-called terminatory principle. Jurisdiction over the conduct crime was held to depend on the relevant conduct occurring within England and Wales, whereas jurisdiction over the result crime ordinarily depend on at least some part of the prescribed result taking place. There you see an example, the Secretary of the State for Trade and Markets 1976, the Court of Appeal 35, per Lord Diplock at the page 61, and Harden. It's also happened in 1963 in the Queen Bench Volume 1-8. A different rule now applies to any offences of fraud or dishonesty, and which the CJA 1903 Part 1 applies in the CA 8.5, and in Smith Wallace Duncan number 4 2004 Court of Appeal Criminal Division 631 in the Court of Appeal effectively rejected the terminatory principle in favor of what has subsequently been referred to as the substantial measure principle. For that, see to similar effect in the Shepherd 2010 Court of Appeal Criminal Division 65 and A 8.5. So now we're going to discuss the law sometimes split crimes into two types, conduct crimes and result crimes. The result crime is one where the prosecution has to show that the defendant's action actually caused some harmful result. For example, under an old law, the indecent exposure counted as a result crime because the authorized had to prove that the people were annoyed or disturbed by it. On the other hand, we have conduct crimes that only requires a proof that the person did the act with the intention of causing harm. The harmful result doesn't actually have to happen. For instance, under a most recent law, the indecent exposure is a conduct crime. You just need to show that the person exposed themselves intending to cause an alarm or distress, even if nobody actually saw it or felt alarmed. So with the result crime, it's all about the outcome. Say I push someone into a pool, and the law would only call the offense and complete if they were actually got wet. The result has to happen. With the conduct crime, It's about the act and the intention and not whether it worked. So if, for example, let's say somebody unzipped their jacket and planning to shock the people, it doesn't matter if nobody's looking. The offense is still complete because of what I did, what they did, and what they intended. So the reasons lawyers cares about this split is because it also affects where you can be tried. For conduct crime, it's enough that the act happened in a country. For result crime, at least part of the result, like the splash, needs to happen there too. And if I have also read the paragraph 3, and if you have read the paragraph 3, what's in the paragraph 3? So here's what we're looking in the paragraph 3 is, what they are looking in the paragraph 3 is, we are looking at the idea of the actus reus, which is just a fancy Latin phrase lawyers use for the external elements of the crime. Basically, what you actually do in the world. So the text is pointing out how courts have wrestled with figuring out when and where an offense really happened, especially if it stretches across the borders. There used to be this old idea called terminator principle, which basically said a crime happens in the place where the last act, the final piece of conduct, take place. But that turned out to be a bit too rigid. For example, in cases of fraud and dishonesty, that doesn't really work, because fraud might involve steps happening in different places. Say one person sent a false information from abroad, but the effect it felt in England. So over time, the courts shifted what's being called the substantial measure principle. That means if a substantial part of the crime, not just the last act, happens in England, then England has jurisdictions. So, for example, imagine you're cooking a meal. Under an old rule, it didn't count until you served the dish. That's the terminatory principle. But under the new approach, if you already done most of the chopping, mixing and cooking in England, then England can say, hey, this meal was basically made here. And that's the substantial measure principle. So yeah, I hope this helps, and if you get any question, please reach out to me. So that's one.
Subscribe to my channel.